All right, can you guys hear me? Perfect. Welcome to the plenary session. Let me introduce myself first before we introduce our esteemed guest. Uh, Probably know most of you, but for those who don't know, I'm Reggie Livingston. I am the vice chair of the Scholar Advisory Committee for the Northeast region. In addition to that, I'm an alum of the foundation and won this scholarship 30 years ago, which I think the gray hair can
Mhm.
attest to at this point. I work in private equity real estate here in New York and have been engaged with the foundation from the very first moment that I received the scholarship in a variety of capacities, like I said. So for the next half hour, you hear less from me and more from our guest here, Kwame Onwuachi. And I think what I want to do first is kind of read his bio to give you guys a sense of him, so you can learn more about him. And then he and I, over the next 30 minutes, will get into a discussion that I hope you guys will find interesting, and I hope you guys will find instructive as you kind of think through your own life and the challenges and the things that you're trying to navigate. So first, some of the bio. Kwame is a James Beard award-winning chef and author of the critically acclaimed memoir, Notes from a Young Black Chef, which is being adapted into a film, actually, by A24. His resume is incomparable. He's been named one of Food and Wine's best new chefs, Esquire magazine's 2019 Chef of the Year, 30 Under 30 honoree by Forbes, and it was featured in Time 100 Next 2019 list. He's been named the most important chef in America by San Francisco Chronicle. Raised in New York City, Nigeria, and Louisiana, he was first exposed to cooking by his mother in the family's modest Bronx apartment. He took that spark of passion and turned it into a career. He's been trained at the Culinary Institute of America in New York City. He's opened 5 restaurants before the age of 30. He appeared as a judge on season 18 of Top Chef last year and has appeared as a contestant on Top Chef a few years ago in their season 13. Currently, he serves as Food and Wine's executive producer. In this recently appointed role, he's collaborated on big brand moments and events, including the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen, where he hosted cooking demonstrations and events. Next up, he will be releasing his first ever cookbook, My America Recipes from a Young Black Chef, which will be released in May of 22. So, with that, let me say, Kwame, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having. That's a mouthful, man. That's a
That's a lot. That's a lot, right?
the presentation. That was great.
It makes me wonder what the heck I've done with my life when I read all that with someone so young and so accomplished. Um, so we have some time together, and here's what I'd like to do. Um, I mentioned to you, or I mentioned to everyone in the intro of myself that I'm an alum of the foundation, and you're speaking to hundreds of scholars right now that are part of the Jackie Robinson Foundation. And one of the reasons that I have remained involved for so long is because it had a meaningful impact on my life. And that's why I try to give back to the scholars that are there today. And one of the ways it's had a meaningful impact on my life is it exposed me to people that I probably ordinarily wouldn't have met, and I got to hear their stories and see people who looked like me, and see myself in their story. So what I hope to do is kind of extract from you a little bit of your story because I think there's so much to be gained from these young scholars in college right now who are thinking about what should I do and how should I do it, and oh my God, this didn't go right and how do I navigate that. I think there's a lot to be learned from that. We'll do that over the course of 30 minutes. I'll try something a little bit on the fly to some of you who have questions. If there's time, please put them in the comments.
I would
I'll try
love
to
to
pull.
love
Yeah,
to hear.
I would try to pull some of those. I want you to hear from our talented scholars and not just old heads like myself. And that. So we'll kick it off. And as you guys have questions, I'll try to incorporate them in the comments, and I'll be looking off to the side to try to do that. So again, Kwame, welcome. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you spending the time here. I will admit that I knew a little bit about your story
Mhm.
beforehand, and then kind of did some more of my own research in preparation of this. And the thing that kept coming back to me, one of my favorite books is by Angela Duckworth, and it's called Grit. And she talks about the success or the traits that it takes to be successful. And she's identified this one trait. Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of things that can help you be successful, but she identifies the one primary one is grit. And she
Mhm.
defines grit as a combination of passion and perseverance. And that kept coming to me as I was reading more about you because I could see that thread of passion and I can see that thread of perseverance that I think is so important that you need in order to be successful. So let me pull out some of that a little bit and start with the passion and we'll hop around a bit. First of all, food. How did you become so passionate about food? How is that a passion? Why is that a passion? That is not something that that's typical for a young black man.
Yeah, well, I think we got to start with the word passion, right? That's the buzzword right now. Passion is something that can come and go.
Hmm.
Passion does not just equate to success. I can be passionate about movies and watch them all the time. Doesn't mean I'm going to be a
Sure.
movie star. I can be passionate about my daily routine, but it doesn't mean that I'm a wellness coach. So
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about that word passion because that needs to be unwrapped. And
Hmm.
passion doesn't necessarily equate success, but I do think passion equals happiness. It's something that makes you happy. So if
Hmm.
you have a hobby on every weekend, you like to do this thing, you're passionate about that, and that's something that makes you happy. And then I think once you dig into that, then you can nurture that and then it can become something that equates to success. And for
Hmm.
me,
Well said.
um, cooking, it started out as a chore. My mom, she had a catering company that she operated from the house. Me,
Hmm.
my sister, my mom, we lived in a one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, and she had a
Hmm.
catering company that she operated from the kitchen.
Oh
And
wow.
very much against the law, she threw me an apron at 5 years old, and anything, but I nurtured that chore, and
Hmm.
that chore turned into a hobby, and that hobby turned into a passion, and that passion turned into a career that I was able to nurture and become successful at. But it wasn't until later in life that I knew that it was a passion that I could do
Interesting.
this. I remember I had a short-lived rap career. I was also
Okay.
serving in restaurants. Yeah, yeah. Don't ask me to spit any bars because it's not gonna happen. But I was walking around Soho after I got off a shift from work, and a lady that I met in a store, she happened to be the owner of the store, and she told me she was doing a launch party. The store
Hmm.
just opened a week ago, and I was like, "Oh, are you excited?" She was like, "Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I just need a caterer." Now I had catering experience, and being the hustler that I am, I was like, "You never asked me what I did." And she said, "You're a caterer?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a caterer." She was like, "How old are you?" I was like, "Ma'am, relevant, okay? Do you need catering? You seem like you're in a pinch." And she was like, "All right, cool. Well, I really want to do these miniature cheesecakes, this beef carpaccio." I was like, "Bet, like I'll be here tomorrow and we can do a tasting and you let me know if you like it or not." And she's like, "You know how to make cheesecakes?" I was like, "Ma'am, please do not disrespect me. I am a caterer." And she's like, "All right, cool. So tomorrow morning, let's knock it out." I went home. I was freaking out. I never made cheesecakes in my life. All right.
Right. Right.
So I called my sister. I got a recipe, and cheesecakes take like 3 hours to make. To make the batter, to cook it, to cool before you can cut into it to see if it actually is proper. It took me about 4 tries to get it done. So now we're talking about it's like an hour before I have to get to this tasting at 10 a.m. I'm still up, and I realized like, damn, I've been up for about 12 hours. No music, just focus on cooking. No, like
Right.
text one. This must be my passion. Like this must be the thing that I can do this for the rest of my life if I really nurture it. And that's where I
Hmm.
really fell in love with cooking, was when I realized that.
So let's talk about that experience. You put yourself out there, even though you didn't have it all worked out in your head. and committed to something, and you weren't exactly sure how you were going to be able to execute upon that promise.
Exactly.
What is it about you that gave you the gumption to be able to do that?
I don't know. It's some sort of God-given gift to just do things. I can't equate it like it was this one thing that happened that I knew that that's the reason why I
Right.
am today. It comes from something greater than me, you know. I feel that it's so beautiful to suck at something, you know,
Mhm.
like to not be good at something,
Mhm.
because if you eliminate that fear of judgment and you put in the work and you water those plants, talent shines, you know.
Mhm.
An ability to do something shines. So yeah, you cannot be. Steph Curry wasn't the great 3-point shooter we know him as today when he first
Mhm.
got into the NBA, but look at him now. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame regardless of whatever happens for the rest of his career. So
Sure.
like being comfortable with not being good so that you can become great is something that I pride myself in.
I think it's such a great lesson because I think sometimes a lot of us there's this pressure to be good, particularly people of color. You have this opportunity. You're thinking, I don't want to let anybody down, so I got to have it all worked out, and I don't want to take chances, and you end up taking a safe road and end up shortchanging yourself, probably
Yeah,
more than anything,
exactly.
in that realm. So I love that story of you just kind of putting yourself out there because you don't have always have to have it all worked out. I would imagine that's been a thread or a trend throughout your career on some level.
Absolutely. I mean, I just started acting recently. When I say
Really?
recently, about a little over a year ago now. And I acted as a kid in theater, but I really wanted to get back into the acting industry. I felt like I can make a lateral step from I'm on TV now and I can like get in the right rooms quickly and have visibility. Uh,
I gotta add that to the bio. I didn't see anything about that in that.
yeah, we got
Wrong.
to add it. But when I first started, I don't want to say I was terrible. I don't think anyone's terrible at anything. They're just learning. And if
Mhm.
you have an acute ear and an eye for excellence, then you're not going to be great at something when you
Sure.
first started. So I kept going and I got acting lessons and I worked with different actors and I sat in on different auditions to see how mannerisms were. And I watched a ton of movies for the critical eye of acting, not just for having a good time.
Mhm.
Now, I landed a gig in a movie, like playing an actual character, not a cameo. So,
Right.
like, yes, it's a common thread for me is like, it's okay to not be good at something because
Mhm.
it's beautiful to look back on yourself and say like, wow, I've 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 made progress.
Right.
Mantra is always just a little bit better every single day. If you can get
Mhm.
a little bit better at something, I don't care if it's nail tech, I don't care if it's styling, I don't care if it's cooking or acting, just a little bit better every single day. You're going to look back 100 days from now and have an incremental growth, a huge growth, a quantum leap. Um,
Yes.
so that's really my mantra, and that's how I live, my life day to day.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I was reading a book recently, Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about being 1% better every
Yeah.
day and the compound effect of being
Hmm.
1% better every day. It's kind of like you said. Um, so let's talk about more of the food in that path. And I definitely want to get into some of the challenges you had because I think there's as much to learn from that as this current path. Um, so you're the catering business, the restaurants. How did you put yourself in a position to do that?
I just dove in, man. The catering. You heard the story. I
Yeah.
told you I was a caterer, and I got the gig, and I
Right.
became the official caterer for the store. And then
Hmm.
from there, I was working in restaurants just as a server, as a cook, and I was like, man, I really just want to cook my own food. I don't really know how to go about doing that. Maybe I
Hmm.
can start my own catering company, but I need capital. So I was on the train home in New York City after a shift, and I saw these kids come on and sell candy. And I was like, damn, these kids just made like $5 in 2 minutes. You know what I mean? At that time, I'm
Yeah.
making what, $20 an hour. I was like, what is an hour of that worth? And I did the
Right.
math and I learned these kids were making like 3 times the amount of money I was making if they did an 8-hour shift, for 5 days a week, tax free.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did that. I quit my job and I started selling candy on the subway and saved up enough money to start my catering company. And yeah, things just really took off from there.
How lucrative is candy on the subway?
It's pretty lucrative.
Really?
Yeah, I saved up thousands of dollars in 2 months.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and started my company.
All right, so you got this capital, you're starting the company. I think I read in some of your some of the other things I read about you that you've opened restaurants and had some experience there. Walk me through some of that and kind of how that came about.
Well, after I did the catering company, then I went to culinary school and then
Hmm.
I got introduced to fine dining. So then I
Hmm.
worked at some of the best restaurants in the world. And from there, I went to do pop ups around the country. I got an opportunity to open up a restaurant from doing pop ups. I did pop ups in DC, and New York, and LA, and Miami. And I had investors reach out to me from all these different cities just from like showcasing myself. And once again, I wasn't ready. I just put myself in front of people. You know,
Hmm.
fine dining to, and here's an analogy: fine dining to one person is either Olive Garden or the French Laundry.
Right.
You put yourself out there, there's going to be someone that identifies with your craft,
Hmm.
and you really can't quantify excellence. Excellence is subjective, is objective. So I got an offer to open a restaurant in Washington D.C. and I took it and I moved, packed my bags from New York City and moved
Hmm.
to D.C. and opened up this fine dining establishment.
Hmm. And then how did Top Shelf come about? I'm just trying to, try to
Yeah,
track
so
this
when I
right now.
did all of these events around the country, these pop-up restaurants, I got national press in every single city I was in. So
Hmm.
Top Chef started to hear about me. This is before the boom of Instagram. This is before the boom
Hmm.
of media. Um, I was just, I was Googleable at that time. A lot of people,
Right.
and Top Chef reached out to me. They just asked if I wanted to come on the show. I didn't have to try out or anything. And while the restaurant was being built in DC, I went on Top Chef.
Got it. Got it. And that experience, I guess, it seems like you were a contestant and came back as a judge
Yeah,
a few years later, which is very cool.
moment.
Kind of full circle in a way. Um, so let me ask you this: as you've navigated this space, I would imagine outside looking in that there aren't many people of color in the space. And I think, whether you're talking food or private equity or whatever our scholars end up going into, many of those professions, they're facing the same thing, right? Not seeing people who look like them. So maybe you can give us a sense of how you've navigated that and how you've, you know, come through that and still succeeded despite that.
I always say that you can replace the word chef on my notes from Young Black Chef and put it in any category,
Hmm.
it will remain the same. There's not many Black people in any of these spaces at a high level. We're not given those
Sure.
opportunities. Have that. We don't even we don't have that nepotism
Sure.
that's involved in that.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
so, um, So I think it is a challenge for sure, but it's also an accelerator. I have a tattoo on my arm that really represents fear is fuel. It's a Molotov cocktail with fearful eyes, and I
Hmm.
use that as like if I'm afraid, I need to like embrace that fear and step into that fire to in order to come out stronger. And
Hmm.
it's not for everyone, and that's something that everyone. I think people of color who have the tenacity and the mental dexterity to push through should not look down on our brothers and sisters around us for not doing that because
Hmm.
there's so many obstacles that have put in our way that have been put in our way to prevent us from accelerating in any
Hmm.
of the fields like nepotism
Sure. Sure.
so like I think it's something that you should take in and use as fuel if you can. And if you do, and if you make it to the other side, you have to continuously reach back to pull
Hmm.
forward because it is not easy. It's not an easy path. We're
Right.
reminded every day that we are Black. We're reminded every day that we're not supposed to be here.
Right.
So remind everybody else that they have the opportunity to do that as well.
Right. that responsibility that you're talking about reaching back, now that you have reached this level of success, and I'm sure there's a lot more to come. How are you thinking about ways that you can do that? Because I think that's something so important that we try to teach our scholars. This is Jackie Robinson Foundation. It's named after a man who spent a lifetime of not only being an example, but giving back. So we'd love to hear more about how you think about that and the concrete things you're doing in that regard.
I think there's two pillars of giving back. I think, like Jackie Robinson, him going to, the MLB and being the first Black man to play, professional baseball in the major leagues, I think it was a selfless act. He was probably very comfortable playing in the Negro League. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. Like, and going there, it was a symbol. It meant more for other people. So by like jumping into the fire and using fear as fuel, I think is a strong way of giving back. If Jackie Robinson never gave $1 to anybody, or never created a foundation or anything, or didn't have a foundation in his likeness, he would still be doing the work because he jumped into that when nobody else wanted to. Now, the other side of that is actually tangibly, giving back. And, for me, to speak to the first part, I continue to do things that no one is doing. Like, I created a nail polish line, as a young Black, heterosexual male. I think that gives creative carte blanche to so many people to do what they want to do. Sure. And show that there's different revenue streams that you can garner, based upon your platform. I've opened up restaurants when I didn't really want to, because it was a big splashy thing that I knew that other Black chefs would be able to look at that and say, someone did it. Someone did that. And the other side is I give back, in terms of scholarships. I have a Kwame Onwuachi scholarship fund, where culinary students can go to the Culinary Institute of America on a free ride and worry about any finances like I did when I went there. I work with Lehman College, which is a college in the Bronx. Sure. Food insecurity in the Bronx and on campus. I also go to schools, and in the Bronx and talk to students or anywhere and try to just connect with these kids, because I lived their life. I was Jews. This is not some like 60-year gap of all you got to do is work hard. I'm like, right there, 6-7 years ago, right. And then I also give back to No Kid Hungry, which is a nonprofit organization that tries to end childhood hunger in America. So there's many ways that I give back, but I think by being myself is the biggest way that I can give back. Right. By continuing to push when I want to fold, because it is tough to keep going in this industry. So that's way.
So you mentioned this transition a bit. You mentioned speaking to those kids because you were those kids, right? And there's a certain identification there that they respect and that they can see in you and you see in them. Talk about a little bit about, at least from the things that I've read briefly, it was you were in some gangs and you were selling drugs and all this other stuff. And I think sometimes people can't make the connection. They hear that and they see you and they're like, wait a minute, that doesn't compute, because I know what that life leads to. And you think it's a dead end. And yes, a dead end, but you can take yourself out of that. And it doesn't even have to be that, right? It could be any unproductive behavior or habit or what have you. So talk a little bit about, one, how you got into that life, and then how you got out of that life.
Yeah, well, it's a great question and great point. I was a product of my environment. That's how I got into that life. I wasn't like, man, I really want to join a gang. I got into a fight for some BS. I'm not even going to get into the specifics of it. I got jumped, and then somebody that was on my block did not help out when I got jumped. So then they made me fight him, and then I beat him up. And then when I was walking away, they gave me a handshake and did a whole thing. And I was like, wait, what's going on here? And they were like, no, you're part of the gang now. Like,
that was the initiation. You didn't realize.
Yeah. So but if I didn't go along with that, I would have been ostracized from the neighborhood. So I was a product of my environment. I think there's lessons in everything, and I think, some of the smartest people have been drug addicts at one point in time. Some of the best family orientated people have been people that partied all the time. you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can take like lessons from every single thing. I was lucky enough to like say this wasn't the life for me. I've had enough. I've done what I did what I was supposed to do. I lived, you know, to the age that they said we weren't gonna live. And at that point, I was like, what else can I do? It was the first time that I proved myself to myself, because
Mm-hmm.
I went in there, this kid with glasses, you know, who liked to dress in designer clothes, and joined a gang by default, and became a cool person within the gang and like a successful drug dealer. After that, I was like, I can do anything. I do. If I was able to infiltrate the Bloods in the Bronx and become a respected member of the organization,
Right.
and still was talking like this,
Right.
then the sky's the limit, because
Right.
this is harder than corporate America.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that's what I took from it, and
Right.
I love the lessons that I learned there. I'm not proud of
Mhm.
everything I did while I was there, but I love the
Sure.
lessons that I learned.
And the transition from that life to saying, you know what, forget that. I need to get on this new path. What was that like? What was the impetus for that, if you will?
The impetus was a couple things. You know, I looked myself in the mirror and I was like, you're kind of getting in too deep. You know, you got
Mm-hmm.
this, you know, you got a whole operation, you know, this is not like your family wanted more for you.
Right.
Uh, and this isn't who you are. Like, yes, you've succeeded in this. It's time to go.
Sure.
You know, and it was a hard look in the mirror. I think the election of Barack Obama also aided to that as well. You know, seeing him
Interesting.
become president, I was like, there's no way he's going to become president. You know, 35 years ago, we couldn't eat in the same restaurants.
Right.
How is this man going to become president when the cards are stacked so much against us? And when he
Sure.
did that, that also was a green light in my head. Like, oh my God, you're a waste in your life. You know, like there's so many other things you can do. Like pick the hardest thing and go for it, or try to find something that you really love that you won't go to jail for, and focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the impetus of it all.
Mm-hmm.
I remember flushing all the drugs that I had down the toilet and buying a one-way ticket to Louisiana, and got a job as a cook, and I never really
Wow.
went back.
Let me ask you this, because I have certainly know that environment, have had friends in that environment, and they make that choice, but then life kind of pulls them back in every now and again. How did you navigate that, or just not get pulled back in?
I mean, I tiptoed back in for sure.
Hmm.
I was making, you know, $20 a week as opposed to $3,000 a week as a waiter in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Um, but I think you got to have the willpower. You know, I give glory to a higher power. Honestly, like
Hmm.
there's no reason why I should not have been in the same shoes as my friends.
Hmm.
I would say that like my parents were a strong force in that mentorship, but that also was dicey as well. You know, my parents were products of the 70s and 80s, so it was party time for a lot of people. Um, so the focus wasn't always there, but I think the intent was always there of making sure that I had a better life.
Right.
I think those seeds, you know, they grew as I got older, but I don't know. I think the cards were stacked against me. It's a miracle that I'm here right now. So I don't
Hmm.
know what to attribute it to. I definitely don't attribute it all to my own willpower. I think that
Sure.
there is a higher power that was looking out for me and making sure that I was like going on the fork in the road, going in this direction instead of this direction. Plenty of
Right.
time.
Right. And were there people in your life also that helped with that?
You know, early on, I would say no. You know,
Hmm.
I was the oddball out. You know,
Hmm.
I was the kingpin. I was making a lot of money, and then I said I'm not doing this anymore. And then my
Hmm.
friends took my position, and they were like, "You're crazy! Like, why you're gonna cook for $10 an hour?
Right.
You what role models do we have for that to be a good Cinderella story? You're gonna be doing that for the rest of your life and trying
Sure.
to provide for your family." So, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to start my own business. What? Why would you do that? There, we already have our own business. So, like, I didn't have anybody to like really bounce ideas off of, you know, until I started really separating myself from my neighborhood. And then
Hmm.
people started seeing my steps that I was taking. And then at that point, they were like, don't come back. Like, I'm not going to allow you to come back here because you're on the right path.
Right.
So I think I still inherently had very, very good people around me. There was just no examples of it. So like everyone was skeptical at first.
Right. Boy, I swear this time has gone by so fast. I think we got a couple minutes left.
Oh, really?
Believe it or not, yeah. Assuming we're still on this 1:30, I do have one question. Julius White, one of our scholars, what did you do when you felt overwhelmed with your circumstances? How did you navigate that when you just, yeah, you got this goal, but man, it just feels like a lot. Like, how do you press through and keep going?
I cried first and foremost from the pressure, and then I just kept going. That's it. You just have to keep going. Like it's really easy to stop. It's really hard to keep going. So crying and like living and being sad and like working through those emotions are important. But then you have to get up and keep going, not digressing ever.
Right.
It's as simple as that, but it's also very, very difficult to do.
Right. Another question, you're an author, obviously. Is it better to self-publish or go with an established publisher? How do you think about that?
I went with an established publisher, so I don't know. I've never researched the other side of that.
The self-published route, yeah. This book that you that's coming out, My America Recipes from a Young Black Chef, that's released in a couple months, I guess. Talk to me about that book. And
oh, it's great. It's great. It's right here. It's my first cookbook. It really encapsulates my version of America. What I grew up eating: oxtails, curry goat, shrimp etouffee, gumbo. This is what I thought of as American cuisine. I didn't think like mashed potatoes and roasted chicken was like food at all when I was a kid. Yeah, and I think everyone has a different version, but it also tells the anecdotes of these dishes. It also tells stories and anecdotes above these dishes about how they came to be and the journey they took to get to where they are.
Gotcha. Well, look, it's 1:28. I don't want to run over into the 1:30 time. I know there are other things. I just want to say, one, thank you so much for sharing your story. This is the kind of thing that can really impact the lives of young people who really hear from someone who looks like them, the challenges that they've had, the lessons that they can take from that. I love your kind of put yourself out there and embrace fear, because I think sometimes so much of us is scared to try, scared to do, scared to fail. But if you can embrace that failure, it can lead to a lot. And I see a lot of that in your life. And that's something that is admirable and that we could all learn from, no matter what the circumstances. So with that, thank you again. I need someone, I don't know if we just log off at this point at the 1:30, at least I think you and I do.
Okay.
Kwame, and we'll circle back. Appreciate it, brother.
It's great.
Be well.
Take care.